this is his chart. You look on the made a simplified version of his chart. I have a few slides looking at the different aspects of these things, but on this slide you can see I'm talking about the ascendant, and in Vedic astrology, this is the North Indian style chart, and the top diamond is always the ascendant. So you can see it's got the number 2 there. That means he's a Taurus ascendant. Characteristics of Taurus are like you're self-reliant, you're grateful and sensual and supportive. It's it's ruled by Venus, but it's about security and safety through resources and stuff like that. But he's got 2 planets in the ascendant, on the ascendant and Mercury, and his sun is actually at the highest degree out of all of his planets, which means it's his Atma Karaka. It's like his soul significator. It's like this represents him. This is the planet that represents who he is. So he's like the sun, that's pride, courage, power, assertiveness, success. You can be very inspired and ambitious, assertive, impulsive, and fiery. So fire, like sun, is actually a malefic, because if you look at the sun with your eyes, it burns. It's too much. So it's a very powerful planet, or graha, because it's not literally a planet. So that's just characteristics of him. You can see he's like the sun. He's very powerful, very assertive, and he's got Mercury there. Like I said, this makes it so his spiritual evolution is through his mind, through the intellect, and through communications and media. That's what the Mercury is about, is communicating with others. Writing is a big thing. Speaking is also another big thing with Mercury. So those are all aspects of him for sure. You can see that that's what he does. He's a fucking speaker. So that's it for his ascendant. Those are the two most prominent planets on his chart. So his moon, you can see down here, that's the 5th house. You count this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in the 5th house. The 5th house is like it's past life talent. It's also everything fun and like romance, everything you do for fun, everything pleasurable. So having the moon there, the moon is like your mind and your emotions. The moon being in the 5th makes him, he can be fun, expressive, and charming. Brilliant, intellectual. He's passionate about his beliefs. He's virtuous and moral. It rules the 3rd house, because Cancer is there in the 3rd. Up here you can see, which actually makes him artistic, happy, courageous, and makes it so he can fulfill his desires. His moon is actually in the sign of Virgo. So, in Vedic astrology, they look at the moon as the most primary planet. It's the closest planet to us, or graha, and it reflects your whole inner self, basically. Everything you're feeling, everything you're thinking, it's your whole mind. So he's very much like a Virgo. Virgo is about like improving and organizing, enhancing and assisting. It's you can be very perfectionistic and controlling and a workaholic, and that's definitely the case with him. He's I'll talk about this later, but he's a 1 in the Enneagram, and that really fits too. So the perfectionism and the controlling and the workaholism. the nakshatra that his moon is in, you know, in the sign of Virgo, it's the nakshatras are like the sub constellations, and his is Hasta, which means like the hand, and it's also ruled by the moon. It makes him dedicated and generous, intelligent, resourceful, calm, practical, very detail oriented, and totally immersed in the world of doing. He's doing stuff constantly. Like his work days is like 16. He has like 16-hour days. Like he's not just 8 hours. No, he's doing stuff the whole fucking day. Like always, man, working on his shit. So I mean, you can totally see that with him. How detail oriented he is. I mean, you know, with his first book, Maps of Meaning, I think it's like a 700-page book or something. It's crazy. It's a big book. I don't remember exactly, but he spent 15 years on it, and he worked on it for 3 hours each day, and he wrote every sentence like 50 times, and then he just reduced down to the one sentence that he wanted to use out of those 50. So he wrote like a huge book like 50 times over 15 years. Which is just it's crazy to have that much discipline and control and getting into the details and all that stuff. And that's totally what this moon is saying. You know, it's totally what he's about. Because the moon is in the 5th, that means that he's got past life talent with his mind. So you know, it totally makes sense. So let's look at his Rahu. His Rahu is in the 3rd house up here. We'll talk about his Ketu as well because they're related. But you can see his Rahu is in the 3rd and his Ketu is in the 9th, across from it. They're always across from each other. His Rahu in the 3rd makes you ambitious, courageous, energetic, passionate. Gives you leadership ability and writing ability. The 3rd house is associated with courage. It's a lot like Mars. It also deals with like brothers and sisters and stuff like that. I think that's why the communication is part of it, because when you're growing up with your brothers and sisters, that's who you communicate with first. So it's like it's how you learn to communicate is with your siblings. I actually don't know if he has siblings, but you know, communication is a big thing. It makes him, because Rahu's there, they call that the networker, messenger, or teacher. And it's actually in the sign of Cancer, which actually means he's moving towards home life, family, intuition, because that's, you know, the Cancer is a water sign, towards his emotions, his peace of mind, embracing the softer side, caring and learning to be vulnerable and emotionally aware. And you could totally see this in himself. Like family is a really big thing for him for sure. And when we talk about his K2, this will make sense. So, you know, he cries sometimes when he's talking. He gets really emotional, and you can feel it from him. It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen. You know, public speakers. You know, they're talking about what they're passionate about, what they really care about, and he really feels all the pain and sadness and horrible things that have happened in history, and he feels for so many people. And you know, when he talks about people coming up to him and talking to him about what they've learned from him and how they're getting their lives together and how everything's you know, how they're going towards an aim and they're cleaning up everything, they're cleaning up their lives and they're making a big difference. That really gets them, I mean, it's really cool that he's he has a strong intellectual side, but he has a softer side too, and that's totally makes sense that he's moving towards that, moving towards that energy. It's actually conjunct Venus, so that brings a lot of Venus qualities to him. Makes him creative, makes him compassionate and loving, harmonious and social. His charisma increases the happiness of other people. And I bet this has an effect too. I mean, he does have an attraction to Venus stuff. I mean, just like the way he dresses. I mean, he dresses like a boss. I mean, he looks awesome all the time. His suits are sick. It really helps to have like an actual image. Like how you present yourself really does make a difference. Having a sense of taste and style, and he collects. I think he collects Russian art in his house, and he just has a bunch of Russian art. So art really matters to him. I think also just beauty is definitely a part of his thing for sure. Just go to the next thing. So his K2, because his K2, Rahu is what you're moving towards in this life, and K2 is where you're coming from, what you've done in past lives, what your past life activity was, what you have a lot of experience in, stuff like that. And because it's opposite the third house, it's in the ninth house. And so third house is like with just like communicating with people, and ninth house is like higher communication, the higher philosophy, the higher sides of things. So K2 in the ninth means he seeks enlightenment through foreign philosophies and teachings, and he develops an unconventional approach. So he's kind of built his own path that way, through his philosophy. And it's in Capricorn, so that's opposite Cancer. So basically, he's learning about Cancer stuff, but he has so much experience with Capricorn stuff, which is worldly affairs. Pursuing worldly affairs in his past lives is what he's done a lot of. Makes him really organized, makes him perfectionist, practical, and gives him a sense of duty. And and Saturn is there with K2, which actually rules Capricorn. So Saturn is actually happy to be in Capricorn, but that totally reinforces the energy of that Saturn stuff. So it makes him disciplined, responsible, and gives him a philosophical and detached view, and it makes him exceed competition. So I mean, this guy, like I was saying, I mean, he's perfectionist, so controlled and disciplined, and it's crazy. He just has so much of that ability. So that's the balance, with his Rahu and Ketu, is going from that worldly life, work and stuff and discipline, to being more in touch with the emotions and family and stuff like that. So that's what he's been balancing, basically. So, when you look at the 10th house, it's this one on the right, this diamond on the right, is the 10th house. That's his career and his public standing, what he's known for, what he's going to be doing, how he's going to be known. So he's got Jupiter there in the 10th. And that means, Jupiter is a benefic. It means that he's going to have a successful career, high position, fame, and it's Jupiter is like, Sagittarius in the 9th house. It's the same kind of energy. So, he's a teacher of philosophy. Jupiter is like philosophy and higher knowledge. Makes him spiritual, makes him happy and content. Jupiter rules the 8th and 11th houses. So if you look at the 8th house down here, it's got the number 9. That's Sagittarius. And in the 11th up here, that's where Pisces is, the 12th sign right there. So because Jupiter is in the 10th, it's connecting the 8th house and the 11th house to his career. So the 8th house, is like it's research, psychology, metaphysics, getting deep into the details and it's the 8th house is like it's like Scorpio stuff, It is kind of related to the cult, but it is metaphysics as well, and you can phrase that in different ways in psychology, getting deep. So that's what he does, he's a psychologist. And so the 11th house deals with friends and groups and organizations, and that's a big thing. I mean, he talks in front of huge groups, and he has a big connection to groups and stuff. It gives him a prosperous career and gives him many career opportunities. So it's interesting. You can see that the psychology there, and the group orientedness is there. And let's look at his Saturn real quick, just to talk a little bit about that more. So Saturn is in the 9th house, which basically means that he's had restriction and struggles with philosophy. Might have in past lives had to deal with mental oppression and dogmatism and restriction of personal freedom. So in this life, he's breaking free of that and developing his own philosophy and his own belief system and teaching it to other people. So, like I said earlier, also, Saturn is in Capricorn. And what that means is, like I was saying, Saturn restricts all kinds of shit. No matter where it is, it's restricting you in some way. So it means, that he might have had earlier on in his life struggled with this, which is, the fear of success, of his own power, of humiliation, of being humiliated by society, due to a fall from a high social position and an abuse of power in past lives. So he did something in past lives that was hard to deal with, and he must have made some mistakes, and he doesn't want to abuse power again. So, he's got to do it the right way this time, and it seems like that's what he's done. But, that brings, caution, discipline, and hard work that needs to be dedicated towards serving society. So that's what Saturn does when it's in Capricorn, is tries to get you to put your efforts in the right place and actually serve people.